The bride screamed as the dock creaked violently beneath her, champagne glasses tipping over just as the entire wedding setup began drifting into the middle of Lake Meredith with her, the groom, and all 200 guests still on it. 30 minutes earlier, I'd warned Karen that my dock wasn't a free venue. Now, watching from my porch with a fresh lemonade and my binoculars, I couldn't help but mutter, "I told you so." That Saturday morning started off like any other peaceful weekend on the lake. I had just stepped outside with my mug of hot coffee, ready to feed the ducks and maybe oil a few boards on the dock. The water was still, fog curled at the edges of the trees, and the only sounds were the chirping birds and the hum of a boat engine far off in the distance. Then came the unmistakable shriek of a power drill. I turned and nearly dropped my mug. A massive white canopy was halfway up on my dock. Beneath it, several folks in pastel dresses were setting up what appeared to be wedding chairs. 2 burly guys were hauling in a portable speaker system. And right in the middle of it all was Karen. Karen was the kind of woman who gave suburban moms a bad name. As HOA president, she believed she ruled this community like a monarch with a clipboard. Her hair was always aggressively highlighted, her sunglasses cost more than my pickup, and her favorite sentence was always prefaced with "as per HOA policy." I had dodged her calls, her newsletters, and her surprise property visits for months. But now she had finally crossed the line. My dock, my property, was being transformed into a full-blown wedding venue, complete with flower arrangements and champagne bucket. I stormed down the path to the water, stepping around folding chairs and floral arches. Karen spotted me just as I stepped onto the dock. "Oh, Hank," she chirped, "don't worry, we'll clean everything up afterward. We're just using it for a few hours. It's for my niece's special day." I stopped cold. "Karen, this is not community space. This is private property. You don't have permission. Take all this down right now." She waved a piece of paper at me like it held magical authority. "I already cleared it with the HOA. Look," she said, handing me the flyer. It was a wedding invitation. Not a permit. Not even close. This isn't a legal document. You can't host an event on someone else's property without permission. That's trespassing. Karen's smile soured, but only for a second. "Hank, don't be difficult. This affects the whole neighborhood. It's not just about you. Think of how romantic this is. The lake, the view, the pictures. My niece will cherish this forever." I folded the paper in half and handed it back. "No. Get off my dock." She turned away before I finished speaking, barking orders at the catering crew and gesturing to the DJ setting up near my fishing chair. They ignored me completely. I stood there, stunned, as the dock swelled with guests arriving early, selfie sticks flashing, heels clicking against the wood. Karen had crossed the line so far she couldn't even see it anymore. I walked back up to the house calmly, not saying a word. I had warned Karen once, and that was all I owed her. The thing she didn't know, and what I didn't bother reminding her, was that my dock was detachable. I had been doing repairs on the piling system over the winter, and had designed a temporary quick-release mechanism so I could replace a couple of support beams without hauling in a barge. It took me 10 minutes in the boathouse to flip the release lever. Back on my porch, I sat in my rocking chair and raised my binoculars. The ceremony had just begun. The groom stood at the front with trembling hands. The bridesmaids giggled nervously. Karen stood off to the side near the generator, checking her phone. Then the dock let out a long, low groan as it detached and drifted backward. It started slowly, so no one noticed right away. But when the flower girl stumbled and pointed at the water now visible between the dock and the shore, the panic set in. Guests screamed. Someone shouted for a rope. The DJ's table tipped and a speaker fell into the lake with a splash. The bride dropped her bouquet and grabbed her veil as it blew sideways. The groom tried to act like it was part of the plan, but even he looked like he was about to hurl. Karen screamed something about a lawsuit. A toddler dove for a balloon and nearly slid under the table. All the while, the dock floated steadily, confidently, into the middle of the lake. My phone buzzed with a call. It was Tom from the sheriff's department. "Hank, tell me I'm not watching your dock with a wedding on it drifting across the lake right now." "You're watching it. Did you detach it?" I took a sip of lemonade. "I didn't touch anything. I just warned Karen. The doc must have had other plans." He laughed so hard he hung up. Down at the lake, Karen grabbed a megaphone from the catering team and started shouting directions. Her voice cracked as she demanded calm. Nobody listened. A paddleboat launched from one neighbor's yard, driven by 2 HOA volunteers. They looked like 2 squirrels paddling a log in a hurricane. One slipped and fell in. The other screamed and kept spinning in circles. The bride's mother fainted and landed face-first into a platter of shrimp cocktail. It was beautiful. It was chaos. And it was all on live stream. Unbeknownst to Karen, one of the teenagers filming the whole thing had started a live broadcast. Within minutes, the comments were pouring in. Lake wedding turns into Titanic sequel. Karen's dock of doom. Is this a horror movie or a rom-com? People were screen recording, reposting, and laughing from across the globe. I set my binoculars down and leaned back in my chair. The sun was high now, casting shimmering ripples across the lake. The birds had returned to chirping. The chaos was still unfolding out on the water, but for me, peace had returned. At least for now. Because I knew this wasn't over. Karen didn't take humiliation lightly. And something told me she'd be back. With paperwork. With drama. With fire in her eyes. But I had plans for that too. The dock was nearly 50 yards out when the chaos hit its peak. The music had cut out entirely, and the soft sound of lake water slapping against the wood planks was now louder than the DJ's busted speaker. Guests scrambled, some trying to call for help, others just shouting into the wind as if sheer volume could reverse their floating fate. I watched it all unfold from my porch like I was sitting in a front-row seat at a slapstick comedy show. My binoculars fogged up from the steam of my fresh coffee, and I had to wipe them down twice to get a clear look at Karen, who was standing center dock, flailing her arms like a traffic controller at a burning airport. Karen finally seemed to realize the severity of what was happening. She whipped out her phone and began pacing in circles, probably calling the HOA board or maybe trying to reach a towboat. But even in the chaos, she kept pausing to flash an overly dramatic look at her surroundings, as though she were starring in a reality show titled Disaster Bride. Meanwhile, the bride had taken off her heels and was now sobbing into a handful of soggy tissues, while the groom stood silently, clutching the edge of the dock with both hands like it would somehow stop the drifting. Then came the paddleboat. 2 of them. One launched from the Hendersons' yard, and the other from what I assumed was one of Karen's more loyal lackeys. Each had 2 people paddling furiously in circles, clearly not trained for any kind of water rescue. The first paddleboat got halfway there before someone in a full suit leaned too far over, tipping it on its side and sending them both into the lake with a splash. Screams echoed again, followed by a short cheer from someone still on the dock who clearly didn't like the guy who fell in. The second boat, paddling like 2 kids on a sugar high, managed to reach the edge of the dock, but had no way to tie it down. They had forgotten rope. Instead, they latched onto the dock by holding the edges with their bare hand. As the current pulled the dock further out, the paddleboat began spinning like a cheap carnival ride. One of the women aboard finally gave up and let go, drifting aimlessly while yelling that she was getting seasick. I had to cover my mouth to stifle a laugh. Then, the real twist hit. A news helicopter arrived. At first, just the soft chop of rotors in the distance. Then it hovered in, louder, circling the scene like a vulture over roadkill. Karen noticed it immediately and went into full PR mode. She straightened her blouse, pulled her sunglasses down from her head, and grabbed a microphone from the DJ's ruined station. Through the broken speakers, her voice boomed weakly, full of artificial cheer. "Thank you for joining us today for our beautiful floating lake ceremony. We are thrilled to bring such a unique celebration to Lake Meredith. Please enjoy the open bar and float